understand at the point where WWE was still giving you your severance pay that you were actually a consultant for WCW at the same time?
Yeah, when I came back home from New York, and you know, I thought Vince would maybe pay me for a couple of weeks, and it just went on month and month and month and month. Well, after about a month, the first month, I called and I said to the HR person, and I forget the name, I said, I'm no longer at WWE. You're still sending me checks. Yeah, well, I asked Vince about it, and he said to keep it up until he said otherwise. So 1 month became 6, and I called back again, and they said, yeah, Vince knows you're getting the checks. I said, well, business must be good. He said, yeah, it is. So about that time, Eric Bischoff called and said, you're no longer with WWE. Would you be interested in being a consultant? And I said, what all does that entail? Because if it's coming to Atlanta, I'm not interested. And he said, no, just I'd like to have you as a consultant where I can talk to you on the telephone and toss ideas about. And I said, well, let me call Vince because he's still paying me. So he said, okay. So I called Vince and I said, Vince, they want to pay me a lot of money to be a consultant. Number one, if you don't want me to get involved, I certainly won't. Number two, you're still sending me your checks, and I don't feel right if you give me the go-ahead to keep getting, you know, your checks. And he said, well, first of all, you helped me at a critical time in my life, and I'll pay you as long as I want to, because I appreciate you. He said, the second thing, the quicker Ted Turner runs out of money, the quicker this goofy war will end. So Eric Bischoff or anybody at WCW is not going to listen to you anyway. So take their money. I said, okay. So I called Eric back and told him, yeah. So he sent the paperwork up. No, he came up. Eric came up here. Flew up. I picked him up at the airport and we came to the house. And made the deal and signed the little contract as a consultant. And Vince kept sending the checks for another 6 months. Finally, I said, this is not right. And I called the lady back and said, I'm going to quit cashing these checks, so quit sending them. And they did. Eric called me. He wanted me to talk to Hogan about switching him heel to Hollywood Hogan.
Okay.
And Eric was afraid that Hogan would say no. And I said, he's not going to say no. He said, well, will you call him and talk to him about it? So I called him. And I said, you know, Terry, they want, I think it'd be good for your career to switch up and show them you can work both ways. They want to call you Hollywood Hogan. And he said, yeah, fine. I'll do whatever he wants. But I called Eric back. Eric was appreciative of that call. Crazy.
So did they ever ask your advice on anything business-wise as far as how they could save money or make their product?
Yeah, Eric would call maybe once a month, and nothing really stands out. You know, he asked me about what I thought about running Head Up against Raw, and I said, well, that's what I would do if I was running it.
So I guess the time you would have been there was, I guess, around the time that they first started Nitro, right up until
Yeah, well,
Hogan's turn.
a while before they started Nitro,
Okay.
maybe 6 months, and then I don't know. I think that I got paychecks for about 1.5 years.
Wow. Did you ever have to file any reports on their television shows or anything?
No, he would call. He asked me what I thought. I was always politically correct. You know, he didn't want to hear it. I didn't like it any more than Vince wanted to hear.
How did you like dealing with Eric Bischoff overall?
Yeah, he was a little insecure, and I remember telling him when he started All the Talent, I said, but you know, you have to be political in that situation. Being a consultant, you have to really understand that generally the person hiring you doesn't want a consultant. They want a validation. So, I would be very diplomatic and say, you know, Chrysler can run out of money, so can Ted. If I were you, I would be real careful that the talent earns their money or justifies their money. And of course they wouldn't. They'd pay somebody $30,000 or $40,000 to stay at home. Crazy kind of stuff.
Did your contract just run out, or did you quit, or how did the end of that deal come?
Oh, isn't that funny? I'm trying to sit here and to recall. No, I do recall. Because Vince was calling, asking me to do some things for him that I perceived as a conflict. So I called Eric and I said, Eric, you really don't need me. You're doing a great job.
Because I guess Jeff was still working for Vince during that time, wasn't he?
That probably was a factor, yes. And, you know, I just remember that I didn't feel comfortable with the conflict. Linda McMahon called me once, I do remember this, and said, aren't you real close to the Steiners? Yes. Well, could you kind of back channel, tell them we'd like to talk to them? And I said, well, I can't right now. I'm working for WCW. And I called her a couple of months later, and when I wasn't working for WCW, and arranged them to meet the Steiners. They called Vince called me about meeting with Hogan about coming back, and I set that meeting up too. And because, you see, I had this real feeling for Vince McMahon Sr., even though he was dead. And I don't want that to sound self-serving, but it's just that Vince Sr. intervened in my life, and Eddie Graham, at a time that had they not, I wouldn't have been in the wrestling business. And so there's not much I wouldn't have done for either man.